Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
I'm here.
Commissioner Breitling?
I'm here.
Commissioner Peterson?
I'm here.
Commissioner Steen?
Here.
Commissioner Capitan?
I am here in New York City.
Wonderful. We have a quorum. Thank you all. Taylor, if you lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Taylor. Commissioners, presuming you've had a chance to review prior meeting minutes, if so, I'd look for a motion to approve or amend, please.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying.
Amended items? Agenda? No.
That was minutes first.
No, just minutes.
Excuse me.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Order of the agenda. Commissioners, we have a couple items that need to be amended out of our agenda, both one on consent and one on regular. Item E would be removed on consent, and item 3 would be removed on regular. Both are deferred items that will be either don't need to be done, or in the case of Castleton, deferred to another day.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. I would move to approve the order of the agenda with the amendments noted.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the order of agenda be approved as amended. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Now is the time to roll through what is now amended consent agenda. Presumably you had a chance to review. Any questions, amendments, discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sherling.
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the consent agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, checking my friends. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes, consent agenda is approved. Now is the time within our meeting. We have a couple minutes allowed for the public at large to address the commission. If you are not on the agenda right now, now is the time to address the commission. I don't see anybody in the room. I don't see anybody virtually in the room. With that, we'll move on to regular agenda. Item 1 on our regular agenda. Review or approve requests from the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. Mr. Dodds, we have 2 items, and I understand that you, sir, will be the gentleman presenting them to us, as you have in the past, similarly, I would imagine.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks for having us again. We have 2 agenda items for your consideration this afternoon. Today, I don't believe we have any property owners or representatives of the property owners in attendance.
Anyone online, sir?
I don't believe so, but maybe just to confirm.
Just a real quick, let me check. Anybody online virtually representing either one of our items on A or B? Mr. Dodds, continue.
Maybe just a couple things to note. Joel Paulson, Executive Director, is here tonight with us, and also Jody Smith, the new Lands Director for the Diversion Authority, so just wanted to take a minute to introduce them.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the Cass County Courthouse. Thanks for helping us out. You too, Joel.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Dodds.
I would also just point out Dan Jacobson, the chair of the Cass County Joint Board, is virtually with us. Sean Fredericks, the attorney for the Joint Board, and Chris McShane are here as well. I think they're available for questions should we have any, along with our land agents. But
And all important team members.
yes, all important team members. Yes. So with that brief introduction, I guess I'd turn your attention to the packet. The first parcel on the list is OIN 809. The property owner is Karen Offit. She also owns OIN 1883. As usual, maybe just give a brief introduction. The Cass County Joint Board is tasked, of course, with purchasing the right-of-way for the project, and they are following the statutory process laid out by the Century Code North Dakota. One of the steps in that process is to come forward to the county commission and request approval of the use of quick take. And that's essentially why we're here today. We have not yet been able to settle an agreement with either of these property owners, and so we are here requesting the authorization for the use of quick take. I think you've heard that story before, and so I'm happy to go into more detail if you'd like, but I think I'll leave it at that for right now. In your packet for this property, page 4 is a summary of the negotiations that have taken place. And then page 5 is a map showing the parcel. You can see this property is affected by the Red River control structure. The Corps of Engineers is actively seeking bids for that Red River control structure. They are aware that we have not yet completed the acquisition of this property, but with approval tonight, we would be authorizing the attorneys for the joint board to file the eminent domain action as well as deposit the funds with the court, and that would provide the Corps the opportunity to move forward with that bidding. The negotiation summary is here in front of you. It lays out the appraised value. It lays out some severance damage to that parcel. The severance damage is rather large. That's because the appraiser identified that there would be a change in the highest and best use because of the project. And so there's a fairly high value there for the highest and best use change. There's also a small amount of acres of temporary construction easement that are needed. Next, I guess the packet, you're familiar with that. There's an informal offer from the land agent, followed by a formal offer from the joint board, followed by an invitation to meet with the joint board, followed by a notice of intent to take possession by the joint board, and then followed by official request from the county commission to the property owner to visit at tonight's public hearing. And then there are some affidavits following that in your packet. And finally, I guess I would just turn your attention to page 33, where you see a summary of the contacts. The property owner had early on retained legal counsel, and pretty clearly, if you see on the April 15th notice, the property owner is interested in having a court decide the value of this property. And so we've done our due diligence, we've hired an appraisal, we've presented the property owner with that appraisal, and we've tried to negotiate, followed all the steps, but this is a situation where we have a property owner that just says, you know, frankly, we disagree, we've been through court before, this isn't foreign to them, and so they prefer that a court help establish the value. And so I think maybe I'll just leave it there and see if you have any questions or comments for us.
So, Mr. Dodds, that was actually my question. You know, normally we've got this laundry list in a good way of contacts and interactions you've had with potential landowners or current landowners, potential clients. That date is the one that they basically said, as I noted here, they want to go to court, set the value, not going to change.
Yep.
That, for all intents and purposes, ended the.
That has rung true. There has been continued communication with the attorney for the property owner, as well as communication between our attorney and their attorney. And so there has been ongoing dialogue. As you may know, this property owner owns other parcels. Some of them are already in an eminent domain action, and we look forward to perhaps combining those actions out of an efficiency tactic. But eventually the court needs to decide the value here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or discussion? Is there Commissioner Sherling?
Thank you. I move to authorize the Cass County Joint Water Resource District to utilize quick take eminent domain under section 61-16.1 to 09 of the North Dakota Century Code to take an easement for right-of-way and easement for term of years regarding OINs 809 and 1883.
Is there a second, please? It's moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Checking. Okay, any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item B.
Item B in your packet is OIN 8385. This is owned by Eric Score. This is a rural residential and commercial property in the upstream mitigation area. This property is impacted by Drain 27. It is also a property that does need to be purchased for the mitigation of flowage easement area in the upstream portion of the project. At this time, we're asking for permission to utilize quick take eminent domain for the impacts related to the Drain 27 project, but we do recognize that there is a bigger taking that will be needed on this property, and so we've been trying to work with the property owner for quite some time to work on a relocation plan, and I'll get into that in a bit more detail. On page 4 of the packet, you see the brief negotiation summary there. You can see the dollar amounts associated with the minor taking for the Drain 27 project are relatively low, but of course, this property owner understands that they're going to be a full buyout, and so they've been, again, working with us towards a full relocation and buyout of their property. Page 5 shows a map of the property. Again, you can see the impacts from the Drain 27 project highlighted. And then I might just flip back to the back of the packet here, starting on page 33 is a long list of contacts, multiple pages of contacts that our land agent, Mr. Olafson with HDR, has been in contact with Mr. Score for several years. And towards the back end of those contacts, which I won't read them for you, but I guess I'll just point out a few things. We essentially had a relocation package prepared for this property owner, but in his current rural residential situation, he was sort of grandfathered into the county's subdivision ordinance. And we had identified a replacement site, a property that the project happens to own about a mile east of here. We went to the County Planning Commission to request a variance on the subdivision ordinance for this property owner to move from his current location about a mile east. And the County Planning Commission asked that we try to adhere to your ordinance and get 40 acres of deed restricted land. And so that's currently where we're at. That variance request was denied at the last Planning Commission meeting. And so we're currently working to try to find 40 acres that we might be able to deed restrict. If we're able to find that land, or if we're able to get a variance, I think this deal would be done and we wouldn't have to go through these eminent domain actions. But I guess because of timing and because of those things that are not accomplished yet, I guess we're here today to ask for your permission for the use of quick take for this Drain 27 impact. On the variance note in the subdivision ordinance, I guess I've had a few discussions with county staff and look forward to advancing those discussions. So I just wanted the group to be aware of that, because this is not the only property owner where that dilemma will be something we might be faced with. So with that, I guess I'd stand for comments or questions if you have any for me.
Commissioners, discussion, questions, clarifications? A motion.
Chairman,
Commissioner Brightling.
I move to authorize the Cass County Joint Water Resource District to utilize quick take eminent domain under section 61-16.1-09, parens 2, closed parens of the North Dakota Century Code to take an easement for right-of-way and easement for a term of years regarding OIN 8385.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Captain seconds.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brightling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling.
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Dodds, anything further, sir?
Yeah, maybe just a few more comments about this Score property. As you note here, the taking for the Drain 27 project is relatively minor. We do have a potential settlement for that taking that we are looking forward to bringing forward for the joint board to consider relatively soon. Again, because of timing issues, we wanted to get your approval here today, but I just wanted you to know that we are continuing to negotiate. The property owner is engaging in those negotiations, and so we look forward to perhaps settling this one and, not having to go through the whole deposit position, but I can't guarantee that, so that's why we're here.
Wonderful. Anything further, sir?
No thanks.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Dodds? If not, push to item 2.
Thank you.
All right, push to item 2. Opioid litigation update, not legislation update. That'd be an entirely different subject, Mr. Burdick, wouldn't it? It would be. Right on. Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Chair, when you, that opening comment, you made me look twice to see if I had a mistyping on my memo.
You didn't, I just can't read. Illiteracy. Not good when you're chairing a meeting.
Members of the board, for those of you who have been in your current seats for that time, you might be surprised to realize that it's been more than 3 years since the county signed a retainer agreement with Robbins Geller, Rudman Dowd firm to represent the county in an MDL suit against the pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors of opioids. While we haven't had a lot of updates before the full board, myself and Mr. Burdick have stayed in contact with representatives from Robbins Geller over that period of time, and they've been very diligent about updating us on settlement negotiations and the process moving forward. We come to a point now that we wanted to really bring to your attention, mostly because of not only action that's should be considered by the board, but impact of the county and the ability to potentially coordinate with other units of local government around the state, as well as potentially the state attorney general's office. And it has to do with a settlement that is been negotiated by our attorneys and others with 4 of the 10 defendants in the overall litigation. And there's both some large conceptual questions that we would look for your feedback on of your intent to consider entering into an agreement potentially with the state attorney general's office, but also just some, I'd say, a mechanical update of how we might go about this and what the important timeframes would be to accomplish that if you wanted to do that. So I've had a number of conversations recently with both Mr. Burdick and Tracy Peters in the state attorney's office, but also with Roxana Pierce, who is on the line with us, as well as a couple of other attorneys from Robbins Geller who are more directly involved in the day-to-day negotiations and work of the MDL. So if there aren't any opening comments from either Mr. Burdick or Ms. Peters, I would look to turn it over to Roxana Pierce, if you please, for an update on the overall state of the settlement and what Cass County is being asked to consider at this point.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Wilson? Any questions? If not, Ms. Pierce, welcome virtually to Cass County, North Dakota.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, commissioners. Thanks for having us today. We are here to provide you with an update on the litigation and also to discuss the settlement that's on the table. But as Robert said, in the trenches for you is Ailish Baig and Mark Dearman, and they're both on the phone on the call today. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thanks, Roxana. Thank you, board. My name is Mark Dearman with my partner, Ailish Baig. We are the ones that from Robbins Geller who are most probably in the trenches with respect to the litigation and the settlement. I don't know how detailed you want me to be, but I do understand that this is a public forum, so I'm sort of going to give you a 30,000-foot view of the litigation and then talk about the settlement and sort of what's in front of you now. The litigation has been going on for about 4 years now, believe it or not. Several defendants were sued by the county, by cities and counties and states across the country. The claims were sort of, I can put them into sort of three buckets for you. Some defendants were manufacturers of opioids. Some defendants were distributors of opioids. And some defendants are retailers or pharmacists or pharmacies. And those are sort of the buckets of defendants. And all of them were sued for various claims relating to their contribution to what I will refer to as the opioid epidemic. From the time that these cases were filed all over the country, they were consolidated and coordinated in front of one judge. That judge is Judge Polster in Cleveland, Ohio. So cases were filed everywhere. A group of judges got together and said, we're going to put them all together, all of the federal court cases, which is where your case was filed, and we're going to let Judge Polster sort of navigate and oversee these cases. And on the first hearing that we had in front of him 4 years ago, he essentially said, we need to figure out how to resolve this epidemic. Probably shouldn't be up to the courts, but that's where it is. And so I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help here. And I'm going to look forward. I recognize that there are damages, past damages. Cities and counties all across the country have past damages. But in order to resolve this problem or try to resolve this problem, I'm going to look at issues of abatement, how I can dealing with the epidemic in the future, and how across the country we can resolve these issues. Now, cities and counties are the governmental entities are sort of one set of defendants in this one set of plaintiffs in this litigation. There are Indian tribes. There are wrongful death cases by folks who overdosed. There are school board cases. There are hospital cases. Right now, I am here to talk to you about the governmental entity litigation. Of course, you're a governmental entity. And so the litigation begins. The judge picks 18 to 20 law firms across the country to sort of steer the litigation. Robbins Geller is one of those cases. In addition to being selected to the executive committee, Paul Geller of our firm was also appointed to the settlement negotiating committee with 3 other lawyers. So we are very involved and have been very involved. As the case progresses, what happens is you attempt to put as much pressure on the defendants as you possibly can. That's what the plaintiffs want to do. And so discovery was undertaken at the same time that the judge was trying to work settlement. And although the judge thought that we'd be having these conversations probably 3 years ago, it didn't work out that way. And so he said, well, in addition to the settlement track, we're going to have a litigation track. And so we're going to try to resolve it, but we're going to litigate at the same time. And since that time, there have been millions and millions of pages of discovery produced from all of these defendants to the plaintiffs who have reviewed them. There have been motions to dismiss. There have been motions for summary judgment. There have been several bellwether trials. So once you get all the discovery done and you still haven't reached a settlement, the judge says, well, I know how to put some more pressure on the defendants and the plaintiffs. And so we're going to schedule some trials. And that is occurring and has occurred. While that was going on or is going on, a certain group of the defendants, the distributors, AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, and Cardinal, as well as one manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, also known as Janssen, decided that they were going to try and make some sort of a settlement resolution for the governmental entity cases. In between all of this, there's some bankruptcies, which I will talk about on the end so as not to make it more complicated than it already is. So you have these distributors and you have J&J who make an offer. And essentially, it took about 1.5 years to get to a place where it was even papered as sort of a term sheet. And now we have these settlement agreements, which are available to read, but they are really complex and they are voluminous. And I'll do my best to talk about them quickly here. But essentially, the distributors are going to pay up to, and this is important, up to $21 billion over 18 years. Johnson & Johnson is going to pay $5 billion, up to $5 billion over 10 years. So you're really looking at about an 18-year horizon here. I say up to because, as you all can imagine, or maybe not, there are 45,000 plus cities and counties in addition to the number of states in the country. And all of these entities are potential participants in this litigation. Some of them, like you, are litigating. Some of them are non-litigating. The defendants, they, of course, want total closure. And so how do they get total closure when they have 45,000 cities and counties that they want to release them from this litigation? The way they did it is they hitched on to the attorneys general across the country and basically said to the AGs, we're gonna use a carrot and stick sort of process here. I said up to $21 billion for the distributors. I said up to $5 billion for Johnson & Johnson. And so the way it works is the more governmental entities that opt in, that agree to take part in the settlement, that agree to release their claims or any potential claims, the more money that will flow into each of the states. Every one of the states has a percentage of the $26 billion that they are going to get. That was, those percentages were sort of derived from experts that were hired by the plaintiffs, by us, and they came up with a very complicated formula to figure out exactly what percentage of the $26 billion or the up to $26 billion comes into each state. North Dakota gets approximately 0.19% of the $26 billion. Now, again, the $26 billion is only available if buy-in is sufficient. And I'm going to talk to you about that for a minute right now. Essentially, what that means is that if 95% or more of the, and it's complex, I'm trying to explain this in a way that makes sense, and so I will answer any questions that anybody has. But if 95% of the litigating cities and counties in the state participate and release their claims, then 70% of the money that the state is entitled to will be available. So at 95%, you only get 70%. At 99 to 100%, you basically get 100%. Now, the first thing that had to happen was the state had to say, we're interested in participating, because the defendant said if the states aren't interested in participating, how are they going to get buy-in from all of the cities and counties? North Dakota said they would buy in. Another thing that was supposed to happen, or may be happening, and I just am not aware of it, is the Attorney General in North Dakota should be talking to the cities and counties about a statewide allocation. So whether we get 70% of the money or we get 100% of the money, how are we going to allocate it in the state? Now, similarly to the number that I gave you, which the state has, meaning that 0.19%, there were additional metrics that were prepared which describe how much money cities and counties are going to get under this agreement. Again, we don't know if 70% is coming in. We don't know if 100% is coming in. As of now, in North Dakota, I couldn't tell you if 50% was coming in because we don't know how much participation there is yet, and we don't know where the AG is yet with the allocation. And maybe some of you have information about that that would be helpful to us. But this conversation that we're having, I want you to realize that this conversation I'm having all day, Ailish is having all day with other cities, counties across the country. It's the same thing that's going on in all of the states. Some states are further along than others. Some states are more behind than others. In North Dakota, Cass County is entitled to 9.3% of the money that comes into the state. Whether it's 70% of the money, it's 100% of the money, Cass County's percentage is that 9.3%. But in order to talk to you about actual real numbers and what we would expect total potential recovery to be, we need to know a few things that we don't know at this moment. And again, it's a conversation that we're having across the country. It's the chicken and the egg conversation, because there's a lot of places where we're asking clients to sort of be open-minded to the direction we're heading, but at the same time saying that we just don't know what we don't know. What we do know is if we don't have critical mass and if we don't have the subdivisions buying in, the amount of money that the defendants withhold is significant. So opt-in is important. Typically, this is being driven in part with the AG and conversations with cities and counties. Again, the Attorney General may have had conversations with you or some of you, and I just don't know it, but that's sort of the direction that it needs to go. So it's an opt-in settlement. The more people or the more cities and counties that participate, the more money that is available. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that I probably could talk to you, talk about the deal. Again, it's moving fast. As far as dates are concerned, January 2nd is supposed to be the date in which the defendants are looking to see whether or not they've got that critical mass and that participation that they need. Whether that's going to happen on January 2nd or not, I don't know. The process by which that occurs is, there's a few things that are happening. There's a registration process, which Roxana may have talked to some of you about. The registration process is merely administrative, and it gets you into the system, so you are entitled to receive a release to sign. But again, if I put a release in front of you and I say, hey, I want you to sign this release, I would assume that somebody or many of you will say to me, well, what are we getting? What are we giving for this release? And although I am comfortable saying that across the country, we're having this conversation, across the country, boards are meeting and agreeing that it's an agreement to agree, we should be moving forward with this deal because it's a good deal, especially, to some extent, I'm sure many of you have seen some of the news stories relating to what happened in Oklahoma with the verdict there and what happened with the trial in Santa Clara. These cases are very difficult. We believe in the cases. There have been some verdicts that have been in our favor. There are additional trials going further because, again, this litigation, this settlement that we're talking about here today is only two groups, and it's actually the distributors and one manufacturer. There is still litigation pending against several other manufacturers and the pharmacies, and those cases, the pharmacy cases, for instance, there's a trial going on as we speak today in Cleveland in front of Judge Polster. And we hope to get a great verdict there. We hope that applies pressure to the defendants. And I hope that I'm in front of you having a conversation in 2 or 3 months from now about additional settlements. There's also the bankruptcies, Purdue and Mallinckrodt. Mallinckrodt is a small player. I think there's about $2 billion that's going to end up getting allocated across the country. Purdue, on the other hand, which probably more of you are aware of, notwithstanding that they are the ones that sort of pioneered the marketing of opioids, and many of you have probably seen some of the Netflix shows or read some of the books. As it turns out, Purdue had a very small market share in comparison to the other bigger players. They did invent the design of the marketing, and so they are the ones that pushed it. They filed bankruptcy. I think that is something like $16 billion, of which $4 billion is going to come from the Sacklers themselves, although they didn't file bankruptcy. And there's going to be an allocation discussion about that $16 billion. And in fact, the allocation discussion that I'm suggesting we should be having with the AG now could apply to the Purdue monies, so those monies would flow into the state the same way. It won't be the critical mass numbers because all that money is going to come flowing because it's a bankruptcy. And what we're talking about now is a settlement, but there's still going to need to be an allocation discussion. I've been talking for a while. I know this is really complicated stuff. It is complex, but essentially we need to be able to try and figure out who is participating in the state, what those numbers look like, and what type of allocation agreement the Attorney General is going to offer. There is a default allocation. I see somebody has raised their hand.
Yep. Yeah, in fact, why don't you finish your thought, Mr. Dearman? I have a thought, then my other commissioner will jump in.
Okay. So there is a I lost
But
my
you
train
said
of
there was
thought.
a default.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So there is a default allocation. In the event the AG can't reach an allocation agreement with the state, there's a default, which says that 15% of the money goes directly to the cities and counties. 15% of the money goes directly to the state. Those monies that go directly to the cities and counties, those monies that go directly to the state can only be used for abatement-related approved purposes. You can't build roads, you can't build bridges, you have to use it for approved strategies, and those strategies are written, and we can certainly circulate that stuff. That was 30%. The other 70% under the default would go sort of into a regional abatement bucket. And that 70% and how that regional bucket works is sort of different in every state depending on the agreement. Under the default, there would be a committee of cities, counties, and state representatives, and the money would be decided how it would be spent in different areas. But because the allocation agreements in each state are so different, I mean, the majority of the states aren't using the default, they're using something else. Some of them are a little better than the default, some of them are not as good, some of them are as good. There's just different reasons based on different ways that a state works that you'd want to use one type of an allocation over another. But that's one of the allocation models that's out there. And with that, I'll take whatever questions or suggestions.
Mr. Dearman, thank you. I think I'm going to ask the question that Commissioner Steen's going to ask you, but I get to go first because I have the comm. So the number you have is 0.019% of 26 billion. That's the number that comes to North Dakota, correct?
Okay, so of the 26 billion, roughly 24 billion is going to flow into the states. Of the $24 billion, the state is entitled to, and these are, you don't hold me to these exact numbers. I can get those for you, but I believe the total that the state gets is 0.185703224.
Okay, so that means the state of North Dakota is going to get $4.456 million. Of the 4.56, you said roughly 10% will go to Cass, so we're talking about $440,000 coming to Cass County. What I did,
3%, and that's assuming that we get 100% of the money. Yes.
so as you were talking, I actually was just elected the president of the County Commissioner Association. I texted my association president and said, we need to have it, and this is just one commissioner talking, but I think I'm right. We need to have a joint press conference with both League of Cities, Association of Counties, and our AG to get us all on the same page, because the reality is, that, not to be dismissive of this, but the reality is this is pennies. You know, this will hire a psychological counselor, one person for our jail for 3 years. This is meaningless money. And it's unfortunate. I guess I was hoping for more of an impact, and it's not, certainly not the attorney's fault. Certainly the reality is what it is. This is literally a drop in the bucket if I'm doing the math correct. And I think that, Mr. Dearman, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I would just add, okay, and I haven't done that math, but I would just add that is the direct payment to the city and the counties. There is going to be some regional money that is going to be available. Again, I don't know how it's going to work in North Dakota, but there's going to be some other monies that are available. I don't know how much opioid abatement the state provides to any of the cities and counties versus how much the counties provide. I don't know those things, and so they get a little bit more complicated. And that's why if we have that allocation conversation, we will be able to provide you with better numbers than the math that you just did. And I'm not disputing the math you just did. I'm just saying that there are additional allocation. There's the additional things that happen with allocation that will increase that number likely throughout the state.
Yeah, unless it's 10 times that number. And even then, if Cass County got $4.5 million, given what we're having to deal with, it's still meaningless in my opinion. But with that, Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speaking of the math and somebody who's got a calculator in front of them, you say 0.19%, correct?
Yes.
That'd be 0.0019 times 24 million.
Billion.
24 billion, I'm sorry. That actually is 45 million to the state, not 4.5 million. So it is 10 times more, Chair Peterson, than what you came up with. If I'm doing the math right, I'm looking at you guys. I don't have a calculator in front of me.
Yeah,
but-
I think that math sounds, no offense, that math sounds a little bit better to me.
Okay. So again, but that point, so I figured that number out, the number, whatever it is, but I do believe it. So questions on that without going into the numbers themselves. Have we heard, anybody in the counties, Chair Peterson, heard it all from the AG on this issue?
There has not been a peep, and that's, like I said, that's why I emailed Terry as Mr. Dearman was talking, saying we've got to get some dialogue on this started. And even if it is us on our own, so be it, but we've got to start the dialogue because the AG's office is not, barring the very first communication we had some years ago when he sent one of his associates to talk at us, we've had no communication. And I get along well with Mr. Stencham. Very well, in fact, and I think it's a very easy call to make for me personally. And in fact, Mr. Wilson and I had this dialogue too. But I see my attorney, Mr. Burdick.
Commissioner Breitling also had his hand up, but I do have a comment or two when you have a moment.
Let's jump in with my attorney, Mr. Burdick, and then we'll continue on to Commissioner Breitling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have not spoken with Attorney General Stencham. I would say obliquely that I've had some conversation with the Attorney General's staff. In that regard, the limited information that I got recently essentially went like this. The Attorney General's office does not appear to presently be proposing an allocation agreement or something. And the reasons for that might go something like this, if I was correct, and I can't speak for them. Cities and counties are unlikely to press the issue because, as far as further litigation, at least in this regard, because it's not going to get any better. It's not really worth the effort to pursue it in a court to try and get something better. Cities and counties don't want to be seen as not joining in and hence potentially lowering the amount of money that comes to the state of North Dakota. Hence, cities and counties should probably just sign on and say yes. If they're looking to get some special treatment, it seems unlikely, but I don't know if it's impossible, that the Attorney General will look to do that. Gee, we think because we're a Cass County, we should get something more. That's probably not going to be met with much agreement, but I don't know that for a fact. This is just my rough and preliminary information as I've heard.
Thank you, Mr. Burdick. Commissioner Steen, didn't mean to cut you off. Anything further, sir?
Yeah, I do, especially with that bit of information. You're right. If one county goes and says, we want more, I don't disagree. If the Association of Counties comes up with an agreement and says, no, this 85% of the state is not what we're looking for, there needs to be a different allocation for the entire state, all counties involved, I think we stand a much better chance and a much fairer chance of a different allocation than the 70-15-15. I don't think we should just say, oh, we don't want to be the one who ruins it for everybody else. I think everybody else should say the state needs to reassess what that allocation should be.
This is Ailish Bay. When there's a moment, may I add something to this discussion?
Yep, let me go to my commissioner and then you, Commissioner Breitling.
As I understood the presentation, and I'm willing to accept our CPA's analysis of what the amount is, that is to be paid part over 10 years and part over 18 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Which means we divide the 24 by 18 and then we divide it by 5 again or whatever to get to what an annual payment would be. Would that be a fair statement?
The money would be paid out over 18 years, so every year there would be a distribution, and you'd have to then do some division to figure out per year what you would get, yes.
Thank you.
If I just may jump in and add one thing to this conversation, and Ailish, I know you do, but I want to make sure I get this out. Part of our Robbins Geller's roles and duties in this litigation is an involvement with a group of the AGs who are sort of helping steer the ship for the AGs. If there's any way that we can help you to get on a call with the League of Cities, the League of Counties, or the staff for the AG, just to have a conversation and really see where everybody is, I would love to do that. And I'm happy to give you my cell phone number, or everybody my cell phone number, and have the opportunity to sort of be involved in the conversation like your council had with staff or the counties or the city, the leagues, because this grassroots type thing is exactly what is happening, and it's the way to get some momentum. And if we let them know that we're working together, I think there will be some synergy in that and a benefit.
Noted.
Sorry,
Ailish?
Yes, I just wanted to add that in terms of those discussions, one issue that often arises in the discussion with the AG's office on behalf of the local governments is whether or not it is actually, because so much of these funds have to be used for abatement, who is it that is actually funding abatement in your state? Is it the local government or is it the state? And if it is the local government, if you do have county hospitals and county-run abatement treatment, addiction treatment centers, and who's paying for the Narcan, all of that, in states where it's the local governments that are bearing that burden, there's a very powerful argument to be made that there should be more direct distribution to the local governments and not as much to the state. And you all are in a better position really to know how it is in North Dakota. If the state is funding most of the healthcare and most of the addiction treatment services, first responders, all of that, then they're going to have a powerful argument that more funds should flow directly to the state and lesser funds should flow to the local governments. But if the opposite is true, then that's something that we should be prepared to talk to the AG's office about.
Wonderful. Mr. Burdick?
Just a couple other thoughts. I think what you had proposed earlier about getting together with the cities, the counties, and the AG is a great idea and better than the idea I have at the moment, which was my conversation with my counterpart at the Association of Counties, which was to try and get a group talking, at least of those counties who had been involved in the litigation. I think there has been some reluctance, and I can't speak for the League of Cities or the Association of Counties, but some reluctance to get involved too dramatically, because there has been allegations at least one other place, and maybe other than that in the United States, where associations of that sort getting involved in this found themselves at the wrong end of an accusation that they were interfering with the relationships between clients and counsel. We have multiple different legal groups in North Dakota representing cities and counties. That said, I think there would be progress if we were able to do that. My intended focus here is to make sure that all of the counties who are involved in this, and perhaps all of the counties altogether, would at least understand that this deadline was approaching and that action was needed, and that to share our information.
Another thing is we can provide you with a list of the litigating local governments. And maybe with that list, somebody can help determine who you have relationships with, what percentages of population they have, and we can pick a few of them and go to the AG with a few of them because there's strength in numbers. So any way you all want to do it, we're here to help.
Mr. Dearman, this is Chad Peterson, could you forward me that, well, I guess copy Mr. Wilson, our administrator, and myself, that list as soon as you have a moment, please?
Yes. Roxana, will you send that if I get it to you? All right, thank you. Yes,
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Steen, is your hand up from before, or do you have another question, sir?
I'm sorry, that's from before.
Awesome. Okay, commissioners, any further questions from our litigating team? Mr. Wilson, anything further to add?
Nothing further.
Steen.
Oh, Commissioner Steen.
I do have a question. So we've got this date of January 2nd. And in the information we received today in our packet, there's like a proposed motion. I'm not sure, and these two are coinciding here. And so my question is, at what point in time do we have to make a decision? I'm assuming it's not today.
I don't think that you need to make a decision today, although I would like you to start thinking about, the decision is that I agree that we should be agreeing to the settlement. I just think that we need to have a better idea of how the allocation is going to happen in the state before you sign anything. And so there is an option, and again, it's because of our involvement in other states. There's an option where this participation agreement that you're talking about, which is the release, where we change up the participation agreement and we include some language in it that says that you are agreeing to participate as long as 95% of the litigating subdivisions agree to participate. And if they don't, then you don't. And there's also some language that we can include in the participation agreement, which says that in addition to that, that you're agreeing to participate if an agreeable allocation within the state becomes available. And so what I would ask is if we could have that next conversation, figure out who we should be talking to, because there's only like 30, I think, or 35 litigating locals in North Dakota. We can put a call together with them. We can all sign that participation agreement, which has those conditions, because I'd have no problem recommending to you to sign that agreement and that release, which is contingent upon those things happening. And if we do that, then we increase our leverage over the AG, and we show the defendants that we do want to move forward.
Yes. Yeah, so we don't really have any action to do today.
The only other thing I might add to that, if I may, is that if you were to opt out of the settlement, for any litigating entity that opts out of the settlement and does not opt in by January 2nd, Judge Polster has issued an order as to what comes then. And as of right now, Cass County's case has been stayed, and it has been stayed since you filed it, while the bellwethers proceed. But your case would no longer be stayed. So you would be in a position similar to, for example, San Francisco, which is another one of our clients that is going to trial in April. And so we're in full-fledged discovery. We've produced millions of documents. There's almost about 100 depositions being taken of fact witnesses on all sides, of experts and whatnot. So Judge Polster has issued an order basically saying that your case will no longer be stayed and you will have to enter into discovery within a matter of months after the January 2nd deadline.
And this is Rick again, if I may. I'm fully confident we'll be able to reach some type of an understanding with the counties and the AG. And so I'm not suggesting we opt out, but I do think we have to position ourselves where we can get to that position where we can get into that agreement that we're comfortable with.
Absolutely. Understood.
Wonderful. Commissioners, any further questions? Mr. Burdick, any further questions?
Not from me. We can certainly have outside conversations with counsel as needed.
Perfect. Mr. Wilson, anything further?
Nothing further. I think there are outside conversations to continue.
Wonderful. From our legal team representing us abroad, any further questions or commentary from you?
No, thank you.
Awesome.
Nothing here.
Thank you all for being here. We look forward to some sort of resolution one way or another. I'm sure it's going to be the best we can possibly do.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
See you or talk to you soon. Next item on our agenda, item 4, election joint powers agreement. Oh, no, excuse me. Item 3, tax forfeited properties in Argusville. Ms. Peters.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is a follow-up agenda item from your last meeting, November 1st. It has to do with the property in Argusville that is it okay if I take my mask off? I'm standing here? Okay. It has to do with the property in Argusville. There's 2 parcels of property and there's a school that is placed on that property. And those are the 2 parcels we're talking about. Just as a background, it originally, of course, was owned by the school. It was sold to a private party in 2008. There wasn't anything done on it at the time. And in 2018, the city of Argusville basically condemned the property or found it to be a dangerous property and ordered the owners to demolish it and clean it up. The owners didn't do that, and they went delinquent on their taxes for 2018, 2019, and 2020. That property has now been forfeited to the county for non-payment of those taxes, and it became property of the county on October 2nd.
Birch didn't buy it?
Pardon me?
Birch Burdick didn't buy the
He
property?
did not, no.
Thought about it.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, continue. I thought Birch was gonna take this off our
So,
hands.
no,
Whatever.
he did not,
Thanks, Birch.
did not, although it is on for sale tomorrow in this very building, right? So it's up for public sale tomorrow. So the question became, should we leave it on for public sale tomorrow and see what happens? Should we take it off the public sale tomorrow and look into the cost of demolishing the building and cleaning up this property? If we leave it on the sale for tomorrow, I've spoken with Ms. Madriga and the folks in the finance department. We obviously would need to fully disclose all the issues that surround this piece of property, including the 2018, the city of Argusville determined that the cost of demolition and cleanup would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $450,000. So that's the numbers that they had. We haven't done anything since then. We haven't done any kind of assessment, but I'm guessing the cost to do that is going to be extraordinary. So I would imagine that if we left it on for sale tomorrow, it probably won't be sold with those disclosures. And so we'll probably be in a position where the county commission wants to consider what to do next. So those are the options for tomorrow: putting it on the sale, not putting it on the sale, taking it off, and then looking into the demolition of that property. Now, if the county chooses to demolish the property and clean it up and incurs those costs minus the costs of the sale of the property would be assessed as a lien on the former owner's property. And that's any property that the former owners own in Cass County. So the property was owned by James and Deborah Baumler, and they're the individuals that purchased it in 2008, and they owned it when the taxes became delinquent. The way the statute reads is, by operation of law, you take the outstanding taxes owed plus the cost of any demolition and cleanup, subtract out any money that you get from the sale of the property after it's cleaned up. That dollar amount is assessed by operation of law as a lien on any property owned by the Baumlers in Cass County now or in the future. That's the way it reads. So that would happen. And they do own a number of parcels of property in Cass County as well. So that's what I've got for you.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. So why isn't this the responsibility of the school district? I mean, they just sell a building that obviously has got asbestos and any number of things and just walk away, and then somebody else has got to clean up the mess.
So I can address that. What probably happened was the building, so Montplaisir and I toured this, I want to even say before we were elected, Commissioner Sherling. It's been a long time. Mike's brought me by this site a couple times at least that I'm aware of. And the last one was, what do you want to do with this, Chad? And I think the realization that Mr. Montplaisir had, and had he been, if he's sitting to my right now, he may agree or may disagree, but my recollection of this was that what do you want to do with this? The city of Argusville will not have the capacity to do anything with it. Therefore, it will yield itself or turn back to the county as a property. So the school board sold it to a private developer. Private developer was going to do something with it, never did. Building dilapidated over time. City does not have the capacity be it legal capacity, building inspections. In fact, if you read through the report, Chris Rose, who did the actual report, is a city building inspector for the city of Fargo. I've known her for 30 years, 20 years anyway, 30 years. But long story short, they don't have the ability to do anything with it, nor do they have the knowledge to take the next step. So they condemned it with the assistance of Fargo City Inspections. The owners should have reacted, did not. And by default, the way the law reads, and I'm speaking to two lawyers to my right, well, one to my center, one to my right, it eventually defaults back to county ownership. So it is our responsibility to do something with it. And I think the reality is that we're lucky that the state allows us to then go back to the prior owner's property and lien it. Otherwise, we'd be out. So why is it not the school district's property? Because they sold it to somebody. That somebody never developed it. The city of Argusville never enforced the law they could have enforced. It then defaulted back to a foreclosure for lack of taxes, which trickled down to us. I think we're going to own it tomorrow. I'm hard pressed to think someone's going to come in to buy, I'm going to pull up the PDF here again, 2 little lots in the city of Argusville for $500,000. And the frustration, the only thing I have, and I shared this with communication with Mr. Wilson, I think, Ms. Madrigo, you were also copied on those, was, does the owner know we can do this? Because Commissioner, one more second, sorry, and I think they can demolish it cheaper than we can. I think they can get the job done just as effectively, up to code, without jeopardizing their neighbors or anyone around them, exponentially cheaper than if we go through this exercise. So that's the fear I had this whole time, is it defaults to us, we then own it, and they're stuck because this is not a safe building. We have to do, someone has to demolish this building in my mind. So Commissioner Sherling, then Commissioner Steen, then Commissioner Breitling.
So thank you. I understand the process of how we got here. I'm just trying to understand if we have any recourse with the school district that ultimately abandoned this building and the county is cleaning up after them. That would be my question.
Yes, Commissioner Sherling, if the school district owned this property within the last 10 years, the county could deed the property back to the school. And this was actually done on this school back in 06 or 07. Mike Montplaisir did do exactly that. But then it was sold to a private owner again, and nobody did anything with it, and then the taxes were defaulted on. So we didn't really get anywhere with that. But it's been outside the 10 years now. The current owners have owned it since 2008. And the county took possession of it on October 2nd of this year. So we're outside of the 10 years. So the county has really no recourse against the school at this point.
Okay. And I guess I would just reiterate Commissioner Peterson's question too. Does the homeowner, do they have a firm grasp of what this might mean? I assume, I don't know if they're online or anything, but do they understand that this might not be in their best interest? I mean, I realize they want to just walk away probably, but.
Commissioner Sherling, I don't know if they are aware that is what happens if the county steps in and demolishes the property and incurs all of those expenses along with that.
Does anybody from our finance department or contact them, or, I mean, I get that you're not an attorney either and can't be giving them any advice, but just so that they're truly aware that there's going to be a lien placed upon their other property?
We have attempted to reach the property owner even before we were approached from the city without success, but we can certainly try again. I've reached out to the city auditor with an attempt to try and get some updated contact information for them, and that I wasn't able to, but we can certainly try again.
I think the clock is ticking. I assume we don't have any obligation, though, legal obligation.
Commissioner Sherling, no, we don't. The way the statute reads, if the costs are incurred by the county, it becomes a lien on their property, not after being given notice or anything. I mean, we would want to make sure that they were aware that that was going to happen, but there is no requirement in the statute that we provide any official notice.
Commissioner Steen, then Commissioner Breitling, then Commissioner Capitan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, and they're probably easily answered. Do we have any idea of the value of other property owned by these individuals in the county?
Yes, Commissioner Steen. I got a list of property from the Finance Department, and in speaking with Mr. Montplaisir today, I had some questions for him, and he was kind enough to answer my questions. He informed me that the land value that the Finance Department has is the land value, the taxable land value, and if it's agricultural land, that value is significantly less than the actual value of the property. So I did reach out to Mr. Frakazi this afternoon, and he was kind enough to put together some numbers for me and just looked at the acres that they own, multiplied that by $5,000 per acre, which is about roughly the value. And if you multiply that out, it's over $7 million in properties. So it's a significant, now, this is just what we put together this afternoon. I would want to do a little more of a deep dive to make sure that we had the exact correct value, but it is a significant value in the they have about 15 properties, a number of agricultural lands, and that it appears that they're worth quite a bit.
And thank you. And with that, I don't even need to ask my second question. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Steen. Commissioner Breitling.
Yeah, she answered my question.
Commissioner Capitan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think the lady answered my question. My question was, if we demolish the property, can we not take that cost and subtract the land, the taxes or whatever, and assign it right back to the owner? And apparently we can through the lien system.
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner Capitan. It's the cost of demolition and cleanup plus the amount of outstanding taxes owed, and then we subtract out what we would sell the property for after it's cleaned up. That amount would be assessed as a lien on any property owned by the former owners. Owned now or owned in the future, actually. That's the way the statute reads.
Okay.
So,
Would it be beneficial to contact the owner and say they've got like 30 days to respond, or we will do that and foreclose on what other property they may own to come up with that cost?
So that's the dialogue we're having now, Commissioner, whether we want to put this thing on the auction tomorrow and seize it, or whether we want to take it off and theoretically forego that action tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Burdick.
Two things, Mr. Chair. One, as I understand it, if Cass County took this off the annual sale for tomorrow, it would not be the first time the county did such a thing when there was property that needed to be cleaned up. I think in the past, and not been often, in the past, maybe there was a far smaller cleanup job that involved here, but I think that's been done before. The second thing is, Commissioner Sherling asked if the Baumlers were aware of this, and I think the answer was, well, we're not sure whether or not they're aware of the laws it reads about distributing it across all their property, although I think in the materials that Ms. Peters provided and are available to us, toward the end of that, you can see when the city put their order in place, they indicated that if the Baumlers didn't demolish and remove the structure, that the city may then do it and may charge it against that property. The Baumlers didn't do it, and neither did the city of Argusville. This is a broader reach, as Ms. Peters has indicated, that not only would it apply to that property, but all their property within Cass County.
I promise you, if we sent them a letter saying, here's how this is going to go, we would find this building reluctantly, frustratingly, angrily, if you will, taken down within the next month or two at a cost of substantively less than $200,000 to $400,000. But I don't know what to do and I take you at your word. We've tried to contact these folks over the years. And again, my auditor prior to you has taken me out there too and said, what do you want to do? We've been looking at this for years. We need to let it go to auction. We need to let it be acquired. Just me talking, be acquired by the county. And we need our auditor and our attorney to send them a letter saying, here's what we're going to do. And I would love to have them take it upon themselves to demo it. We allow them as a commission the flexibility for them to do that on their own and give them a hard and fast 30-day timeline or whatever we're comfortable with. And after that, we straight out hire an architect, or an engineer of some kind. Someone's got to put a drawing set together to make sure we're insulated from liability. And all of that gets pushed back to the owners and leaned against their property. Commissioner Breitling and then Commissioner Sherling.
And Steen's up too.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Commissioner Steen, then Commissioner Sherling.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just two thoughts on that. Just looking back at the last meeting we had a representative from Argusville there, or the township, and they really did not want this to go back on the auction block for somebody to buy it, and then they're going to have to go through the same thing again over another 3-year period or whatever it might be. I mean, I know the building's condemned, and it might go quicker. I understand, we have an option here either to sell it or not to sell it tomorrow at auction. And wouldn't everybody be better off if we didn't sell it? We basically sent a letter to the owners, give them the 30 days, and then with that, we just demolish it and assess the lien. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you.
Is there an answer to that? I'm maybe talking to perhaps our legal person or somebody else who might have a response to that.
Okay. Commissioner Sherling, momentarily. Attorneys, your thoughts?
Well, I think the options are, those are the options, right? I mean, you can, if you decide to, Commissioner Steen, if you can decide to remove it from the sale. I think if you leave it on the sale, there's a high likelihood no one will bid on it, no one will buy it, knowing full well what the cost of demolition and cleanup might be. But I suppose you never know. It's certainly possible someone might, and then they would be kind of in the same position. I assume that the City of Argusville Commission would then transfer that same order to the new owners and say, you have to clean it up, you have to demolish it and clean it up, just like they did to the Baumlers. But I think those are kind of the options.
Commissioner Sherling and Commissioner Capitan.
Thank you. I think I actually attended an Argusville Commission meeting, and this owner called in absentee from Texas. This was the hot topic until I showed up with a diversion team. But that being said, I really appreciate Commissioner Steen's thoughts. My head's going the exact same way. The City of Argusville was here last week. They don't want to go through this again. The building's dangerous. I could just see us putting this out on the auction. Somebody gets a great idea to start some cottage industry in there, and they don't get the funding, and it never happens. And then some kids end up there next summer, and somebody gets hurt. And, I think we just need to move on.
Commissioner Capitan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree exactly. I think, and I would put it in the form of a motion that we send a letter to the owner, giving them 30 days, and then on the 31st day, we start demolition and assess the demolition cost, less whatever, to the owner and put a lien on his property.
So remove it from the public auction tomorrow and then do what you said, sir. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Commissioner Breitling.
My understanding is if this comes off the auction, that the city still owns it. And we haven't accomplished a thing, have we?
No.
Commissioner Breitling, the county owns it as of right now because of the tax forfeited property process. It's been forfeited to the county, and it now is in the ownership of the county, and we are selling it at a public sale tomorrow. So the county owns it right now. I'm looking at Ms. Madriga just to make sure I'm saying that correctly.
If we don't sell it at that public auction tomorrow, can we then renew a sale next month?
Can you sell it at a time other than at the public auction?
Yeah, or can we notice another public auction next month?
No.
I believe the statute allows for a private sale at a different time, but it's just a private sale at that time. If it doesn't sell tomorrow, I would imagine that it's probably not sellable. No one will want to purchase it. I don't think with the amount of cost of cleaning it up would be.
Commissioner Steen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, in response to Commissioner Breitling's comments, I think the point of the motion and the second is that we don't want to put it up for public sale. We want to take care of this problem and get it done now and not delay the issues. That's, I think, the point of the motion. I think Commissioner Sherling seconded that, and I will support the motion as well.
Any further discussion, commissioners? Any further discussion? If not, Commissioner Steen? Is that a residual hand?
Residual.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen? Commissioner Steen?
Yes. Yes, sorry about that.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. To our finance team and our legal team, do we have a clear understanding of what our next phase needs to be?
Yes, Commissioner Peterson, thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you all for your hard work. I know this isn't what we all have to deal with every day, but at least we're going to get some resolutions. Again, something that I have been aware of, again, I think prior to my election, when I was on Planning Commission. It's been a while, so unfortunately, hopefully the owners will take it upon themselves to remediate the issue and save themselves a bundle of money. With that, item 4, Election Joint Power Agreement, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is an item that's been deferred the last couple of meetings. We have worked on a JPA, Joint Powers Agreement, between the county and the municipalities and school districts that the county provides election administrative support for. And the point of this really was to formalize our understanding of the roles that for many years were largely understood informally, and really put pen to paper on what our responsibilities would be and what the responsibilities would be of the partner entities. We put out a draft of this a little more than a month ago, looking for feedback. And based on that, we got I would say a limited number of feedback, comments, but also some very helpful comments. One being more or less just a question that wanted more or less an affirmation that it would not cost an entity more or change their cost responsibility for the county to administer elections. The second piece of input that took, quite frankly, a little more time to incorporate into the document, but is represented here in your packet in the Word redline version that was attached, contemplated responsibilities if there was litigation related to administration of an election. And Ms. Peters, Mr. Burdick worked closely with the entity that submitted that request or question, have incorporated that into the draft, and that leads to the really the document that's before you for your consideration today. One of the points of question from this board when it previously came before you was really the responsibility for costs and costs related to elections And, with taking a second look, a legal look at what is identified under the cost section, felt like that we certainly took the concerns to heart that were expressed, but felt like the language as it exists really captures those responsibilities. And another component, I would just say, as we did this, is at the urging of Mr. Montplaisir, before he left office, he strongly urged us to have this in place before the end of the year. We had a document that was largely didn't receive a whole lot of feedback previously, and adding new language into that, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel going into the last final draft before we circulated it for final consideration, and an acknowledgement that on a legal perspective, we felt that it captures the needed language and responsibility of costs. I would stand by for questions.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, thank you. Thank you to Mr. Montplaisir, who's not working with us anymore, but clearly he had an idea, and I think it's a good thing that we formalize what has been, for all intents and purposes, not formal. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Steen.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, I understand your last comments was directed at me, and I appreciate that. So I always had a question on 4E, and if everyone else is comfortable with that, this seriously addresses all related costs, not just the cost of mailing, I'll concede and be quiet. I don't feel personally that this adequately addresses the cost related to absentee and vote by mail applications being sent to all potential voters, but I'm just one.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Steen, you are correct. We, with myself and Ms. Madriga and Ms. Peters, Mr. Birch, Mr. Burdick in the around the table, we really did take a second and third look at the language in that paragraph and debated whether additional language was needed. So I would assure you that was given thoughtful consideration and several opinions looking at it.
All right, so no one is concerned that this may be interpreted as mailing costs only, and I don't want to come back in 2 years when I'm no longer a commissioner and have this discussion. All right, everyone's happy. I'm good.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you, Commissioner Steen. Well, that certainly concerns me. So if there's no one, there's me sitting here. But I would be curious, what do you think the solution would be? What kind of language should be added?
I would, if I may.
Commissioner Steen, please.
I would add on and related costs, including mailing and administrative costs of the mail-in ballots. I just simply add a couple of words, takes care of it, takes the ambiguity out of it. But
including but not limited to, or something to that effect?
Well, I somewhere along the line make it clear that this just isn't about the mailing, because this talks about if the applicants be sent all potential voters, that can be, to me, clearly interpreted as, well, that's the mailing cost, and there's no other discussion here about administering what happens to those mail-in ballots. That's my point. It has been since this thing started. It's been, dismissed. And that I said, if I'm the only one, I'm fine. But if there's three of us that feel the same way, then I think we should have it changed.
Commissioner Capitan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Steen's comments.
Okay, I would contend it sounds like you have three, but Mr. Birch wants to say something.
What we could do is, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and approve this, and we will work out some added language there with that understanding in it, and we'll add it in there and then send it around.
Mr. Wilson.
Sounds great to me.
If Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Burdick, I could talk out a sentence here if that would be you want to consider that.
It would be a heck of a start.
I'm just looking at, based on what I'm hearing, have item 4E potentially read, if a city or district requires that absentee or vote by mail applications be sent to all potential voters and associated election costs, the city or district shall be responsible for the associated cost. Now, clearly I need to edit myself, and I probably should have thought that out before you get the point of where I would
I'm
edit that.
comfortable, I'm comfortable you'll come up with the appropriate change with all those heads you've got working on it, so I'm good. I don't know if we have to take any motion other than that, but I would move, if you're okay with it, Mr. Chair, if there's no other
Yes, sir.
questions, maybe I'm ahead of myself.
Nope, go for it.
I would move that we approve the letter of understanding with the proposed changes as well authored by the group in charge.
Is there a second, please?
Second the motion, Capitan.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, anything further on this item?
Nothing further, thank you.
Outstanding. Item 5, RFP for storage facility. Mr. Wilson, Ms. Madriga.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just finishing up a note here on that last comment, and
We're pretty important people. We got stuff to do, Mr. Wilson.
yes, you are. All right, RFP, County Storage and Training Facility. Obviously, this is a conversation that has occurred in a number of venues over a number of months. It's been discussed at the budget hearings last summer. I believe, again, this is another one of the really important items that I think Mr. Montplaisir left us with as he transitioned out of the office. But that was in his view, the need for an elections storage and training facility. I've briefed you with the memo of the current procedures and process that are utilized using the rented storage space and some of the inefficiencies there of the working conditions there during the summer months, the transitioning from the storage facility to ballrooms for training for updates of the machines and trainings, and transfer back to the storage facility, and then ultimate transfers out to the polling locations for election day. As we got into this discussion over the last year, also an acknowledgement that the current highway storage facility on the east side of the highway property that is primarily used for storage of highway-related equipment is also storing approximately 1/3 of that building is being used currently for law enforcement-related equipment. And so if we were looking at and considering a storage facility, that we could look at something that would accomplish two missions of provide for the needed storage and training for elections equipment, but also relieve the overcrowding in that highway storage facility and remove the law enforcement related equipment that is currently stored in there. It's not the ideal location for some of this law enforcement equipment items with some pretty sophisticated electronics in there, and that's an assessment of the sheriff, not my own comment. But co-locate a number of these things in a storage and training facility at a new location. And the RFP that you'd be considering today would be really a conceptual design level of service on this, as well as developing the building plans. So this would not be approving design and construction. This is approving really the design, and it would come back to you for further consideration with plans in hand if you wanted to ultimately construct this property.
Commissioner Brightling.
Should the suggested motion also include language about cost estimates?
Yes, that would.
It doesn't.
We certainly can add that.
If the chair is looking for a motion,
Yes, sir.
I would move to approve and authorize.
1 second moment. I just say, sir, I saw Mr. Commissioner Capitan, please. Just saw your hand go up, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only question I have is I know that Mr. Montplaisir was pretty emphatic about the fact that on our design and of the building and services that the elections equipment was really needed to be environmentally controlled, or type of thing. So I was wondering if the RFP would also include climate control for that building.
That's implicit in the design. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Has the building committee reviewed this, and do they have a recommendation?
Yes, the building committee reviewed this prior and recommended it be done.
Thank you.
I believe it was unanimous.
Right.
I just.
That's my recollection too,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
I'm somewhat skeptical, but I understand the need for the study so we can help quantify how big this building is and the budget. And as part of this RFP, this is not atypical of any situation. You typically go through design development and then schematic design, and then you have full CDs, construction documents. So as the architects, theoretically architects, maybe CMs, but architects lay everything out, they'll come back to us with a schematic design, basically a box that needs to be so big by so big and so tall by so short, and here's what it's going to cost. And at that time, that's when the commission, I would recommend, takes a hard look at this thing. We don't need to go to a full CD where they go out and bid it and all that stuff unless the commission sees a need for it and we can afford it. So we'll be chugging along the path of every project that's done by most folks. So Commissioner Breitling, you had a motion, sir.
Move to approve and authorize publication of a request for proposals for professional design services, building plans, and cost estimates for a county storage and training facility.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded?
Seconds.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr.
Wilson.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I should have mentioned this off the top. Commissioner Breitling earlier in the afternoon asked me a question of what the current costs are per year for the rental of the rented building as well as associated costs. I've reached out to the finance office, and that is approximately $30,625 annually for the costs related to the rented building. Just wanted to make that part of the record.
Perfect. Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Rodriguez, anything else on this item?
Nothing further.
Outstanding. Item 6, appoint IT Director, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, I'm behind just a moment as I pull up my memo, but this is kind of a moment of mixed emotions for us, I guess. A number of you were appointed to the interview committee for candidates for the position of IT Director last Monday, and I know personally, it was sort of that realization that our IT director of many years, Mr. Terry Schmaltz, that his time with Cass County was coming to a close, and that was a bit of a realization that here it is. But at the same time, we had the opportunity to interview 3 really high-quality candidates. And coming out of that interview, the interview committee, which included myself and HR Director Ms. Cindy Stoic and Commissioners Sherling and Steen, had the opportunity to, again, as well as Mr. Rory Schmitz, who is the Clay County IT Director and was able to provide some valuable technical knowledge that the rest of us just did not have. And at the conclusion of the interviews, the committee evaluated all interviews, tallied scores, and the clear consensus pick of the group was Mr. Bob Henderson for appointment as the next Cass County IT Director. Mr. Henderson is here with us today, and I think would be available for your questions or good wishes. But I just would place before you the motion to consider the appointment of Mr. Bob Henderson as the next IT Director effective December 13th of this year.
So Terry's still quitting, huh?
It's gotta happen sometime.
Not really. I got 3 years left. No offense, Mr. Henderson. All right, that's fine. You have my approval to quit. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Commissioner Sherling?
Thank you. Well, I would at this time move to appoint Mr. Bob Henderson as the Cass County Information Technology Director at D72, Step 4, effective December 13th, 2021, at an annual salary of $101,169.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Dean seconds.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Henderson, welcome to the Cass County family. Glad to have you here, my friend.
Thank you.
Look forward to pinging you in the middle of the night when my iPad doesn't work.
That's no different from that.
Nice. Love it. Next item on our agenda, item 7, Blue Cross Blue Shield ballot. Board of Directors, Mr. Wilson.
This is a item that comes before you annually. I know generally the commission has some good discussion on this one. I think you generally have quality candidates, and obviously the board has traditionally taken quite an interest in this appointment. You should have the information. You do have the information from Healthy Dakota Mutual Holdings, the holding company, and would look for your consideration and discussion.
Commissioners, what are your wishes? Typically, we've appointed, as you can see in the motion, we appoint one commissioner to act as our agent. I believe that was Commissioner Steen last year.
Correct.
Correct, yeah. Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd appreciate having the opportunity to vote this ballot. I typically have a pretty strong interest in what goes on in healthcare in North Dakota, including the Blue Cross Board. I know a number of these people and have a pretty good idea which ones would be good candidates if you'd allow me to vote the ballot.
Outstanding. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Commissioner Steen be our delegate. Discussion on the motion. Commissioner Steen.
Nope, that's the residual.
Got you. Thank you. Anything?
Quick enough, sorry.
Yep. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, yeah, we should do a roll call, I guess. We can do a voice. We do a roll call.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Steen, vote well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Item 8, State Water Commission reimbursements. Miss Madriga, I don't know that you've ever done this before. Holy cow, good luck. I hope it goes well for you. Did you spend a bunch of money? Are you saying we should throw a bunch? What do you want to do?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, for consideration today is the 118th request for eligible costs incurred from September 1st to September 30th of 2021 in the amount of $2,268,176.69 for local matching share requirements outlined in House Bill 1020 for the Fargo-Moorhead Metropolitan Area Flood Risk Management Project.
Wonderful. Commissioners, any questions, a motion, discussion? Commissioner Sherling.
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson.
Yes. Motion passes. Well done.
Thank you.
Item 9, vouchers. Commissioner Sherling.
I haven't had an opportunity to review the vouchers and learn something new today about mosquito traps. I don't know, there were a bunch of traps out there. I thought maybe we were trapping for beavers, but apparently it's mosquito traps. But at any rate, I would move to approve.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brightling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling.
Yes.
Motion passes. Committee reports. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think most of you are aware of this, but last week, I believe it was Tuesday, the County Redistricting Board met and drew new commission district boundaries. That will be formalized by a letter from the chair of the redistricting board, Chair Peterson, to Ms. Madriga as the auditor / finance director, and then forwarded to the state to formalize that process. And appreciate everybody's involvement in that, and both on the staff level and commission and committee levels. I thought the process went well, and the input was very good. I'm going to be brief here, and then just one other update I'll provide for you, that at your last meeting on November 1st, you authorized publication of an RFP for jail intake projection. And we have had a request from one potential bidder to extend the deadline on that to allow for a more complete proposal to come in. So the plan is to extend that, notice everybody who has expressed interest, and accept proposals until December 6th.
Commissioner Steen, you have a question?
I did. Just a question for Mr. Wilson or anybody else sitting there this evening. Did anybody see anything in the paper or otherwise about the redistricting for the county districts?
I didn't get the paper, so no idea.
Anybody else? I didn't see anything. I get the paper, I read it page to, front to back.
I did not see anything either.
Okay. All righty.
Catlin just told me it was in the forum on October 25th.
It was.
Yeah, I think I read it.
Okay. October 25th. That's after we acted on it. That's before we acted on it. I'm talking about after we took action. Anything in the paper after we took action.
I think he's meaning like that a reporter came and reported on it.
I know we had, I know we had members of the media here for the meeting.
Yep.
I don't know that I saw anything after the fact personally.
Commissioner Steen, and even if it was, the consternation amongst people who work within the courthouse says everything we need to say.
I got it.
Wasn't on the front page. Nobody cared. Anyway.
Wasn't on the back page either. So, all right.
Mr. Wilson.
Hey, I'm just curious if I missed it. Thank you very much.
Nope. Nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Burdick.
As the chair knows, today we got served a notice of appeal by a lawyer on behalf of a couple of the people who went through that quick take process on that infinitely long meeting we had on October 18th. So that begins a process of appeal to the district court. I've had initial conversations with Mr. Fredericks and Mr. McShane about it as it relates to their work at the core of it. And we'll be moving forward with that. Just wanted to alert you to it, and we'll keep you informed.
Funny side note on that. So when I thanked the gentleman for serving me, he looked a bit astonished. I'm not convinced he gets thank yous very often when serving people. So I said, thank you very much. I said, Commissioner Peterson, I said, well, it's Chad. And he said, yeah, you've been served. And I said, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you. And watch your step on the ice. And I don't think that happens to him very often.
The fellow that served you, I saw the signature at the bottom, is somebody that Ms. Peters and I know. His father was a lawyer for a long time at the federal prosecutor's office and later did some defense work. And I've tried cases.
Yeah, nice fellow.
And lives across the street from where I grew up.
Perfect, even better. Mr. Burdick, anything further?
Nothing, thank you.
Outstanding. Commissioner Capitan.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Commissioner Steen.
Yeah, just one note, the Thursday and Friday of this week, Commissioner Breitling and myself and a number of other people will be interviewing, I believe, 5 people for the director of the Cass County Human Service Zone. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Breitling.
The interviews are open to the public. They have to be open to the public because they're finalist interviews. I wanted everyone to know that so that they want to sit in, they certainly can. The one thing I do want to report is that both the chair and I participated this morning in a meeting with the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. The one thing I came away from that was new is that there is a new and separate category of African refugees in addition to the amount that supposedly have been allocated to North Dakota under the regular program. And that's another 50 or 60 people.
49 minimum is what we were told this morning.
That's why I said 50 or
Yes.
60.
Yes.
Okay. They did it. I did come away with an announcement that one of the regular refugee families coming in consists of a husband and wife and 10 children. It's something that I think we need to be mindful of because we have some costs that incur to the counties for the various programs that are available and applicable to these immigrants and refugees.
Commissioner Sherrill.
So are these all being allocated to Cass County or some of them going to Grand Forks?
Some Grand Forks and I believe some to Moorhead.
Not the Afghans yet.
No, not the Afghans. yet.
They're looking into that.
Right, but the normal process is for Fargo, Grand Forks, and I believe some Moorhead involvement. We're a settlement city, I guess is what we would refer to. And right now, we're the only one in North Dakota, although they're looking at the possibility of Bismarck, Minot, Grand Forks as well, and maybe Dickinson.
So there's kind of a number that we can support in Cass County, and of course, the last couple of years, we haven't been close to that number, but now we're talking about potentially exceeding that from what I understand, what we can, comfortably support, to make sure people are successful here. So is the Department of Human Services, who's coordinating all of this?
The Department of Human Services has entered into a contract with Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service to provide these services and for staffing. I haven't seen a copy of that contract, and I'm not sure what the costs are involved, but my understanding is that we operate on the federal calendar year, which is September, end of September to November, or October 1st to September 30th. And my understanding is the allocation, not on the Afghan, but the rest is in the area of 200. And that's a pliable figure as well. I mean, it can go up or down. Not likely to go down.
So as a gentle reminder, the state of North Dakota can either accept or refuse refugees on an annual basis. When that happens, the ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement, then steps in, and then they are the ones, headquartered out of Denver, are the folks that funnel people accordingly throughout the United States. Supposedly ORR is going to get more money this year because of this increase. When Commissioner Shirley and I were elected, we were at about 60,000 people under Trump this last year. Not pre-COVID, it was 18,000, and under COVID, it went to almost zero nationwide. Biden's talking about accelerating even when Obama was in office, and he was at, like I said, 60 or 80,000, so there'll be more, plus our friends from Afghanistan that are coming over. Long story short, we'll be at, my number is, based on what the Biden administration has said, before Biden's out of office, hopefully that's in a couple of years, and we'll talk about this time, but my number is we'll be over 1,000 people by the time Biden gets his teeth into us. And we have no say in that number. We have no say in where they go. We have no say in the support network for them. But we do have the say in supporting them once ORR abandons them. And that's the struggle I've had this entire time is we're the good ones. We're the people that help people. This is what we do. But having people come in mass and simply forgetting about them does us no good, does them no good. So hopefully ORR keeps their promise. I don't know if they will, but hopefully ORR comes in and keeps their promise and dumps mountains of resources on us locally, which even if it's just at LIRS, which was the new LSS, fine. Someone's taking care of these people and helping them exist and acclimate.
This is not going to county commissions anymore, though.
No, it never was.
Well, no, it
So,
was.
well, we had-
Remember when you had a crowd of angry people?
Well, we had one symbolic vote. I mean, that's what that was. So, and again, it's great politics by Trump. It was freaking genius, I think, actually. But the reality is the president picks a number, ORR disseminates that number throughout the nation. State can opt in or opt out, doesn't matter. We've opted in, so we have no say in where they go. And frankly, we need them, right? We need the people here. I'm not sure that what we've done in the past was either ethical or whatever, but now they're coming in making a living wage the day they start. You know, we're looking at minimum wages of $13.50, or not $13.50, $16.50 an hour to start with. And one of the places they're looking at is Watford City as well, creating a settlement center there. Well, if you're in Watford, you're going to start making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year.
And that may alleviate the concern we have here.
Yep. They'll no longer be customers across the street. We'll have the oddities.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll have the oddities where you've got a family of 12.
Yeah.
But most are just a mommy or a daddy or some organization that's much smaller than that. And I think
There
that,
is a program too for adolescents without a parent. We have some categories that fit in, some people that fit into those categories as well.
yep, and luckily that's,
minimal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, holy gosh, both for us, but then their life as well. No mommies and daddies makes life hard, so. Commissioner Brightling, anything further?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Shirley.
A number of diversion meetings in the next week. And Wednesday, we're going to introduce the committee to the new Director of Lands, Ms. Jody Smith.
Perfect.
And that's it.
As you all know, we have meetings here and there. I don't think anything out of the ordinary that needs to be discussed. So yeah, there you go. Correspondence.
No correspondence.
Actually, Ms. Madriga, my apologies. One more, anything for the good of the order?
That's okay, nothing to report.
Yeah, awesome. Now, correspondence.
No correspondence.
There is no correspondence, therefore we're on item number 12, which was item 13. Commissioners?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned from this meeting, but we will be having a planning meeting following this, and I suggest we keep this stream open. Mr. Wilson, what is your thoughts?
I would agree with that.
Okay, commissioners, without objection, we'll just keep this stream open for what is also another public meeting anyway, so without objection, we'll just keep this meeting going. Well, we've adjourned the county commission meeting. We will now call to order, unless we need a break. Do we need a break, gentlemen? No? I agree. Okay, cool, wonderful, we'll keep going. Let's call to order the planning session. And Commissioner Steens, Commissioner Capitan, I presume you've got something on your station or in writing? I hope.
I'm working on it.
Thank you. Should I give you a minute?
I have the agenda.
30 seconds.
Okay, we'll wait a second for Commissioner Steen to pull up the PDF. Let me know
Got
when you're
it.
ready. Got her?
Yep.
Okay, for those of us, as a general reminder, this is when we set, and those of you in the audience don't have to stay if you don't want to. Mr. Burdick, I don't think we need, if you want to, great. If you want to get home to your families and everything else, please feel free. We have a chance at this time to pick our portfolios, whether we be chair, vice chair, etc., as well as all our subcommittees. We typically start with nominations on a pretty formal basis. We start with nominations of our chair and vice chair, and then we proceed down the line from there. So I don't know if you had any thoughts. It's always kind of an awkward situation when we're advocating for ourselves, I guess, but needless to say, I don't want to be chair 3 years in a row. I actually kind of do, but I think I've got enough in the pot, and I think it's time for someone else to enjoy the chair that I'm sitting in for a calendar year. So I would defer to that, but I will be bold in my ask of I would like to be vice chair next year, and that would put me into chair during the next legislative session, and I would also be the chair or the president of the County Commissioner Association during that session. So I wear a lot of neat hats. And at the time, I may very well be the vice president or president of the Insurance Reserve Board too. So I can wear all kinds of, like a little Boy Scout, I can wear all kinds of name tags and badges when I walk through the halls of the Capitol. So that would be my wishes. I don't know who wants to be chair, or if we have preconceived notions, this is just one fella talking. So commissioners, what are your wishes?
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman?
Breitling.
My recollection is that last year, we took water resource districts and made them a separate entity rather than under planning and operation services.
That's, yeah, I can't remember.
It did make them a separate entity. We assigned them to Dwayne.
I'm requesting that we do the same this year.
And I guess I'm.
Can we start at the
let's-
beginning of the
let's
agenda, please?
Start at the end and then let's move
Yep.
down to that, because
Okay.
I would like to talk about that. But at this time, I would move to nominate Commissioner Steen as the chair for the period of December 6th, 21 to December 5th, 22, and also move to nominate Commissioner Peterson as the vice chair for the period of December 6th to December 5th, 2022.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Steen.
Again, a residual
Gotcha.
hand. Sorry about that.
No worries. No, I'm glad I'm paying attention to you here. So we've got chair and vice chair nominations. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Portfolio assignments. All right, so typically, administrative A goes to the chair, so that would be Commissioner Steen. This is page 2, for those of you playing the home game. So Steen, and then B goes to the vice, so that would be Peterson. Now, Human Services, we currently have Commissioner Breitling in, Public Services, of course, Sheriff's Office, Commissioner Sherling, and then Planning is Commissioner Capitan. So, Human Services, any thoughts on?
Commissioner Peterson, could I just jump in?
Commissioner Sherling, this is open forum, please.
Thank you. Because we are obviously in a really deep dive here with land acquisitions through diversion, and I serve as chair of that committee, I am requesting that I would have the portfolio of the Highway Department, which has always included in the past the joint water resource districts. And because that also falls under that land acquisition piece of it. I do think that they go together, and typically we haven't served more than 2 years in any given portfolio, sometimes less than that, but I don't think in the time I've been here, in fact, I know I've never served more than 2 years in any one capacity, and as much as I've enjoyed the sheriff's department and the jail, you know, I have not been out to the highway department in quite some time, probably since my second year. I do think that by moving around, and I know there are entities that don't do that, but it is an opportunity to really get to know other departments well. And I would encourage embracing that.
So Commissioner Sherling, you want planning?
Yeah,
Any objection, commissioners?
but I want that to include all those 4 things listed there.
Yep, and Commissioner Steen?
Thank you. I was just trying to verify, Commissioner Sherling, you indicated highway, but highway typically falls under planning and operations, so I'm assuming that's what you were referring to.
Yeah.
Well, it says roads and bridges and planning, and
Planning, weed, vector, water resource boards.
yeah.
And then we have the other discussion, but okay. I just want to make sure you weren't just trying to carve out roads and bridges. I assume that, but I just want to make sure.
No, I know it's all one big out there in West Fargo, the whole building.
Okay, without let's do a motion on that. We should do a motion in a second. Commissioner Sherling? Make a motion, I guess. Well, I guess, you know what? Let's just talk through this. Yeah, let's just talk through this. Okay, without objection, I think Commissioner Sherling is asking for planning and operations.
I'm thinking of, since we're just talking,
Yep.
I think, Jim, you had planning operations for 1 year, I think, and I know you're real interested in public services, public safety services. And I think it would be right up your alley if that works for everybody. But that hinges on Dwayne willing to take on human services again, and I'm hoping he does, since he's on the board and he just seems pretty inclusive and interested in what's going on there. But I'm just throwing my 2 cents in there.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way to start. Commissioner Breitling, do you want to stay on human services for another year?
I can.
Okay, and Commissioner Kaptan, any objections to Sheriff's portfolio?
No objections at all.
Okay, any objections to the proposal we have? So we've got, obviously, Steen as chair, me as vice, Commissioner Breitling as human services, Commissioner Sherling goes to planning and ops, and then Commissioner Kaptan goes to sheriff. Any objections? All right, let's jump over to subcommittees. We can start with the building committee. I would like to stay on as chair of that. Does anyone else wish to go on as vice, or Commissioner Breitling?
I would like to stay on with you.
Okay.
And since that's a committee anyway, as chair has buildings and grounds underneath them as commission, I would like to be on the committee as well. It makes 3 of us, but there's nothing wrong with that because it's a public meeting anyway.
Well, you can take over as chair, Commissioner Steen. You're going to hurt my feelings.
I don't feel that I don't feel I would take over as chair. I just think that I should be informed of what's going on, and the best way for me to do that is at least not forced to, but expected to be at those building committee meetings. I have no problem with having 3 people on that committee.
I guess I don't either. Mr. Wilson, do you see a problem? Who cares?
Objection.
Okay. Without objection, I think that would establish our building committee. Myself, Commissioner Steen, and Commissioner Breitling.
Are you looking at the page where the current ones are, or are you looking at a different page?
I'm looking at, so I have my portfolio assignment sheet open, and then I have my current committee assignment sheet open.
Because some of these automatically change.
Yep. Yep, they switch over, and I'm grabbing the ones that don't. I guess as I progress down, we've had these others that are committed. I'm progressing down the list of ones that aren't, if that makes sense.
You're on page 4 of the agenda. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I have a hard copy. I'm not sure where.
Yeah, I'm on soft copy, but I got it.
Yep, okay. So then if I go to, if you look at this page, Commissioner Sherling, which is your page 2.
Yeah.
I'm walking on the right-hand side. So we have the Board of Health and Cask Lake Food Commission. In theory, those could be flexible, but we've always yielded them to our Human Services representative. So if Commissioner Breitling doesn't mind, I'd just continue that on.
I've been serving on both of those
Yeah,
this year.
yep. And it just sort of, that's sort of the default, and that's when I chaired a couple times to just sort of carry that through. So without objection, I'd have that continue. And then we go to committee assignments with MetroCog, Lake Agassiz, and then planning. Those have typically always gone to highway. And I think I was,
Planning.
All three of them?
yep.
Yeah.
And then I was the alternate, I think, on Metro. I've just sort of been the floating alternate on MetroCog. That can change anytime. That just happened as a default of me being on it first. So the alternate for MetroCog, which if you go to page 3 is now on the top sheet. Anyone else who wants that can have it. I mean, I respond to Cindy Gray's emails if she asks, and I know her. But again, if someone else wants to be the alternate, I don't know that I've had to attend a meeting. Commissioner Capitan, to the best of my knowledge, and Commissioner Breitling.
I've been attending all those meetings.
Yeah, and Commissioner Breitling prior to him made all those meetings, so I haven't even attended. So being the alternate, it's great to have a placeholder.
I still get the email invitations.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they've always done that. It's just a matter of courtesy.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the only committee meeting that I've only been to 2 of them, and that's at Lake Agassiz. I don't know if they don't have meetings or what, but I've been to one with Commissioner Breitling. I guess I was to 2 other ones, but that's it.
Yep, and that carries over to the planning, so Commissioner Sherling would take over for you there. That's that page 2, second block, right-hand side. So we need an alternate for MetroCog. Again, I'm happy to do it.
Either that or I can do it too. That's not a big
Perfect,
deal.
let's do that. Commissioner Capitan, you serving prior, let's switch the alternate without objection. So the main MetroCog would be Commissioner Sherling, and the alternate would be Jim Capitan.
Okay.
Perfect. May as well just progress, just walk down the list. So page 3 I'm on, which is the following list of sort of the random committees. GFM EDC, I really like being on the exec committee.
Yep. I'd like to finish off where I'm at with that for my final year as well.
Commissioners, any objections?
None.
Perfect. Lake Regional, or Lake Agassiz Regional Council, we'd shift Commissioner Capitan and Commissioner Sherling. And then the alternate, anyone want to be the alternate or leave it at Commissioner Steen?
No, it's I'd say Capitan would fit right well in there since he was actually the chair.
Got it. Okay, any
If you're okay with
objections?
that, Jim being the alternate on Lake Agassiz, Jim?
Yeah, no, not a problem.
Perfect. Then again,
Who's the delegate then?
Commissioner Sherling,
Oh, okay.
He sure
along
likes
with-
planning.
Capitan was the chair of the Lake Agassiz?
No, he was the
Your portfolio.
appointee.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood you.
Did too.
and then Cass
Chair
County
of
Board,
Lake Agassiz was Tom Jefferson, last one.
Right.
Cass County Board of Health, Commissioner Breitling, you'll have that again, sir.
Yes.
And then Diversion Board of Authority, I can't imagine shifting that. Are we comfortable with that layout? Okay, and then Diversion Finance. As I am going to move on to chair, do we want to have someone else take over my spot on finance?
Well, I would suggest we're already going to replace Montplaisir with Madriga.
Yep,
Chad, I would hate to lose you because I think as, you know, it's up to you, but I'd hate to lose you on finance because we just got a lot of stuff going on all the time and it's good to keep the chair involved right now.
oh, I'm fine.
Shelley is the chair and she's also on finance as well.
Yep, understood.
Yeah, and I could just jump in here too. When I was the chair, I just sat in on all those finance meetings.
Sure.
But, you know, you don't have a vote, and I know when Tim's on both, I mean, it's not unheard of to have both. As the chair, you're gonna wanna be there anyway. So you might as well just stay on.
Okay, fair enough. Lands Committee, Commissioner Sherling, we have, obviously Mayor Peterson we've assigned, but I'm presuming you and Commissioner Breitling want to stay on?
We're working on some some governance policies to make sure that people are going to be in 75% attendance if they're going to serve on any of these diversion committees. And so that's something, I'll check with Don and see where we're at with everybody on my committee.
Okay.
Because, you know, we appoint those people.
Yep.
But that's, you know, it's the same thing if they're not showing up and the Clay County Commission appoints somebody, or, I mean, just for an example, I have no idea. But they should be aware of that too, just, you know, so we make sure we have lots of participation.
Hey, are we okay for now, though, Commissioner?
We're okay for now.
Okay, and we can always change these things, you know, there's nothing,
Well, these have to be decided by January, so we would need to vote on them formally, you know,
well, diversion.
diversion, yeah.
Yep. I'm sorry, I guess, yeah.
But, you know, so those diversion committees, we have to formally appoint.
So, Mr. Wilson, make sure we're locked in by end of the year for this.
Yep.
Okay, flood public outreach, Commissioner Kaptan, Commissioner Steen, want to continue?
I'll stay on it.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Kaptan?
I can stay on it.
Okay, building committee, we talked about amending, adding Commissioner Steen, so we have a list of 3 under the building committee. Flood sales tax, Commissioner Sherling, Commissioner Steen, you want to stay on, you want to rotate?
No, that's fine.
We're good.
Okay, flood buyout, Commissioner Steen, Commissioner Sherling, same thing?
Just need a big
Yep.
flood so we can meet.
Nope. We're fine, thank you. And then the Cass Clay Food Commission, again, that always carried through Human Services.
Yes.
Okay. And then Planning Commission, going to the right-hand side of that sheet, that would Mary Sherling, of course. And then Human Services Zone Board, we had the vote for what that will be. So that is amended according to the motion prior.
Rick and Dwayne.
Correct.
Yep.
And then page 4, I think it's page 4, I'm going through paper. Scheduled meetings, we always sort of debate about, you know, our first meeting in October, knowing full well our first meeting in October is going to be probably landing on the association meeting, but we've always sort of left it. And then we determined whether we needed it or not at the time. So I was content we leave it as is. The remainder of this, oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would propose changing that. It didn't work well this year. To me, it's never worked well.
Okay.
But why, if we know it's a conflict, why don't we just change it now?
Do you want to go to, well, if we did, interestingly enough, I thought about that because I have said this before, I have so much free time, I guess. I thought about shifting it to the 6th that week, anticipating a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We would then follow, and I guess I haven't even looked at my own calendar. I can't imagine it matters that much in advance.
Wednesday probably be okay, I'm guessing. Or do you just want to push October, each of them back a week since we have an extra week in October anyway?
You know, let me get my
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Wilson.
I did go back and look at all of these dates coming into today. The State Association Conference is October 2 through 4.
Yep. And there, I did look at that too, Commissioner Steen, and if you look, if we pushed it 1 week forward, we have almost 3 full
Gotcha.
weeks. So yeah, you know, again, that's why I'm talking about it right now, because I try to fiddle through my head how to do this, what makes the most sense. And my only push was it would be to October 5th would be the Wednesday.
I think that might be better for one thing, because the 6th, you know, we've been talking about having those diversion meetings, and isn't that the first Thursday of the month?
It would be the 6th then, yep.
Or is it the second Thursday?
It's always been second Thursday, but if you're talking.
No.
Oh.
Our regular diversion meetings are, what are they, the third or the fourth Thursday? Third?
Fourth.
Yep, last, yep.
Okay, then, because we have actually penciled in there another meeting, and there's been some conversations about pulling the trigger on that every once in a while. So that would be the 13th then. So we'd be okay, either the 5th or 6th would be fine.
Yep, I'd suggest we switch October 3 to October 5. With that, I'd accept the remainder of the schedule.
Chair, just a point of interest, I also checked the February dates and the July dates against NACO conferences, because occasionally a couple of us travel and there are occasionally conflicts. No conflicts in 2022 on either of those.
Nice. Commissioners, any other changes to the calendar? If not, switching to the final, what I believe is our final page, the way the rotational works, you will note that we have more sheriff's rotationals, which I think, whether it's Commissioner Sherling or Sheriff Johnner, I think it makes a mountain of sense with the engagement we're going to have, certainly with the dynamics we've had lately, but then we push that further into with the dynamics we'll have with jail additions, financing, and all the other things going on. I think it makes a mountain of sense to switch a bit of our human services zone personal time into a sheriff's department.
However,
I guess what I would do is I'd flip-flop the 1s and 2s, but
could I just add?
Yeah,
here
Commissioner
that
Sherling.
the sheriff really, I mean, I think he would, I know he wants to have more meetings, but not that many more. Because it does get to be quite a time crunch to, you know, prepare for these meetings as well. So his suggestion was every quarter. Right now, he's twice a year. This would put him at every other month, which is probably more than he needs. But every third month would be great.
so if we went February, June, October, oops, nope. You go February, June, October is all he would have, is 3. And then
Oh, we give him
December.
4.
Yep, December, sorry.
I mean, I've talked to him about that a couple of times, and, you know, that was his desire anyway.
Okay.
I would suggest that we have those meetings at 2 o'clock rather than 1 o'clock, however.
Well, we've got an A and a B anyway, so we're here regardless, I think.
Well, no, Human Services is taking up those time slots, and there's only 2 of us.
Oh,
So we'll.
Not on-
Human Services
so-
1 o'clock.
not on the 22nd, not on the 20th.
No, I put the human service
Yep.
not on the sheriff.
They're separate, Commissioner. They're separate dates. So Human Services is the first week. Sheriff is on third week, so there's no conflict. We'd go from sheriff to rotational, sheriff to rotational. Human Services is separate. So we'd wind up having, if we went quarterly, we'd have our first meeting February 22nd, second, June 20th. Let me see, June, July, August. Well, we'd have to go August then, wouldn't we? Yeah, then August 15th. And then October. Too many notes. So
I
February?
mean, you've got Human Services every month.
Yep.
So
Yeah, if we go to quarterly, Mr. Wilson?
You're trying.
Time out. I think that the Human Service Board is going to set their own meetings. I don't think the county commission does that.
Correct.
So what we do as Human Service Board, we'll just have to, the county should set their meeting dates and the Human Service Board needs to adjust accordingly. I wouldn't worry about Human Service Board meeting dates on this schedule.
I concur. So I'd suggest we have Sheriff's Department on February 22nd. He just wants to go quarterly is all, huh?
But you can't do it at 2 o'clock is what I'm saying, because you got Group G, but maybe that doesn't help.
No, we do it at 1 o'clock on the 22nd, and then follow that with Group B.
Yeah. I got you.
Yep. And then,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
you're trying to get 4?
Yep, I'm trying to space out 4 decent meetings that make sense.
Because
Do you
there's
have
a
something?
sheriff in December.
Correct. But we do have one. Do you have one here? That's all I was doing is blocking them out. I have, then you'd flip. There we go. So we would have, just read them off, Mr. Wilson. The proposal is as follows.
And I have a meeting in February, May, August, and November.
Yep.
I haven't plugged in specifically which meeting I would plug those in. Well, February would be the 22nd, May would do that either 1 August.
I'd say stick with your second. So we have sheriff at 1 o'clock, then A or B rotational at 2. However it works out. You follow me?
So I'm looking at, again, on sheriff's rotational right now, I'm looking at February 22nd, 1 o'clock.
Yep.
I'm looking at May 16th, 1 o'clock.
Yep.
I'm looking at August 15th.
That can
1
be
o'clock.
that can be at 2, because we don't have another rotational there. That would normally be sheriff, which we're, okay, so we're at 2 o'clock
And then November 21st
at 1 o'clock.
at 1 o'clock.
Commissioners, any objections to that proposal? And obviously, if it doesn't work, we can simply shift and adjust accordingly.
I just have a question. So then, like, say November 21st, there's still road advisory. You want to have both?
Yeah, we'd have that at 1. We'd have sheriff at 1, road advisory at 2.
Or would you want to switch? Because then December 19th, there wouldn't be anything. Right?
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing's Christmas. I mean, honestly.
Okay. I just want to make sure
Yep.
that you want 2 and then some days without any.
Yep.
Okay.
It just sort of is what it is.
Oh, there'll be something.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's when, yeah. Well, Taylor, we'll need those days. We've needed those days for about 4 years.
Got it. Just wanted to
Okay,
make sure.
commissioners, with that, any objection to the schedule as proposed?
Can I ask for one clarification?
Mr. Wilson,
Back on,
what page?
Page 2.
Page 2, yes, sir.
Excuse me. Maybe. Okay, page 2 is the suggested motion, page 3.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify Commissioner Breitling's comment of jumping in on the water resource boards. I think what I heard your collective conversation being that you would leave water resource boards as it had traditionally been
part of
prior
planning.
to last year. Because last year, Commissioner Breitling did have those. I just want to be sure I'm clear that it's back to traditional prior to last year.
That's my understanding. Commissioners?
Yep.
Yep, sort of our happy circles.
And I hope you don't mind, Dwayne. I just feel
Would
like.
prefer otherwise, but obviously. And you have plenty to do other than being on that one.
Well, I think like I said, we've always had the highway department have that cluster of groups. So I mean, I think they do kind of go together.
Well, I think more important than that, Mary, this year is your position on lands and everything we're going to be going through on that. And the water, it's just,
Yeah.
we've got so much happening with land stuff this year that it just makes sense to me. That's just one person. So it's not necessarily where it's always been. It's what's happening this year to me.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get through some of this stuff. 'Cause, I mean, I do think it's enjoyable to move around a little bit.
Okay, with that, these are actually all established via vote at our first meeting, I do believe, or am I mistaken?
Correct.
Yeah, so this is the assignments. Is there any other business, Mr. Wilson or team?
Nothing from me.
Virtual team members, are we good?
Good.
Okay, in-person team members, are we good? Outstanding. Okay, with that, we will adjourn our planning session. Period. Okay, see ya.